everybody. Welcome back to the Ramblings of a Designer. We are a weekly podcast. We talk about the latest in graphic design news from around the web. Hey, my name is Terry, and I'm one of the co-hosts. I'm a UX UI designer from the Bay Area. I help bridge gap between products and their end users. I'm here with Adam, who helps runs the podcast. So Adam, take it away.
Hey, my name is Adam Zepeda. I'm a freelance designer from the San Francisco Bay Area. I specialize in visual UI design with a little bit of illustration. I like to give companies character.
All right. Okay, Adam. So how is your week going?
So far, so good. So since we last talked, I went on a week-long vacation to the Bahamas. Woo! And it was hot.
Nice.
Yeah, super hot every day.
And did you see any nice looking art or any art magazines over there in the Bahamas or?
No, I did not, Terry. But in one of my excursions, we did go on a kind of trip around the island. There was a person we hired to kind of give us their version of a tour around the island, and he drove us around. And as he was going, he would kind of stop by and talk about the culture and the different locations and where the prime minister was and how their government was, that they even have a prime minister. Oh, that was kind of pretty interesting. And as we were going along, I was also kind of trying to pay attention to the logos that I see for different businesses. And it was interesting because, first off, almost every logo I saw was all in English. And almost everyone I also saw was very current too. Like the design, I mean, I don't know what I was expecting, I guess, but for the most part, there were a lot of just up to date in English designs throughout all the Bahamian Islands. And I thought it was pretty interesting. And what also was interesting too is that the island was full of just a bunch of different name brand kind of businesses too. Like you have your McDonald's and your Pizza Hut and Domino's, and I was like, "Whoa, there seems to be a lot too." It's an interesting kind of situation, I guess. The island deals with a lot of tourism, and they're in the service industry, so I get it. But it was just an interesting kind of look into just the culture that they have there. And a lot of the times when you saw stuff that was more like Bahamian traditional kind of things, they're more towards touristy kind of areas where they're selling teas or I don't know, just different kind of tchotchkes and stuff. And so, but yeah, overall it was surprising to see, and overall it was pretty good design. So I did kind of pay attention to that kind of stuff. It was very interesting. Other than that, the trip was great. It was super hot. I don't know if it kind of recharged my batteries or anything, but I felt like I did kind of get back to my routine more. I don't know if that happened to be where I needed a refresh, or if just that since I wasn't on a routine for a week, that I was like, oh man, I'm so behind, I need to get on something. But I was drawing pretty consistently this week, except the last 2 days. But yeah, overall, it's been kind of interesting. I came back already to client work, off our client work, and I was like, okay, well, I'm back to kind of going back right into it, even though I just came back. And yeah, I mean, so far so good. Well, what about you, Terry? How was your week?
It was really, really good. After our interview with Emanuel, I took his advice, and I do have a Instagram now.
Oh yeah.
So that's up and running. And I do have to tell you, having that Instagram has really helped me kind to stay accountable for doing my illustrations or really figuring out what my next steps are, just as a UX designer and a UI designer. And remember, I was telling you I I get different questions from people from all over the world and stuff like that. So basically, I've been posting those questions in my Insta feedback and stuff, and that's been a lot of fun to
Awesome.
really keep that up. And basically, I have a schedule now, waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning so I can read my 2 books that I am reading right now. So I'm kind of excited and just trying to be a little bit more focused if I can,
Mm-hmm.
and just focus just through this summer what my skills and what I would like to learn a little bit faster if that's possible. So other than that, week was good. Week was good. Okay, so let's get into the news. What do you have for us?
Yeah, let's see. The first article I wanted to talk about was Slack. And so this is from the New York Times. It's called "What If All Your Slack Chats Were Leaked?" And it was,
Ooh.
yeah, it's kind of the story that came out this week that Slack sort of came out and was saying that, hey, our site is pretty well secure, but we're not invulnerable to attacks. And some of the ones that they're kind of talking about is like nation states attacks, or just different type of malware, phishing, just different type of attacks, right? They're saying, we're not invulnerable to these things. And they sort of came out and said that as far as a non-paid user, which I don't know what the state of
I
most
am.
of our listeners are. I'm not a non-pay user. I'm a free user, right? I like as many free things as possible. But they said that with your free account, you could only see 10,000 messages that you've posted yourself, right? And then they said that the other past that, you they you have still those messages on their servers, but you just can't see them. And so they're saying that, like, hey, if you really want to get rid of all these extra messages that you've accumulated throughout the time, then only as a paid member can you kind of go back and kind of curate all your messages. But as a free member, you can't pass those 10,000. And it's very interesting. I would say, if you have a company that is, that runs through Slack, and if you're worried about security, that, maybe Slack isn't the best option for you. I mean, if you're talking about day-to-day stuff, trying to get your team together, coordinating this or that, or as something just for fun, as a link sharing kind of thing with your teams, sure. But if you're talking about really high risk, high sensitive material, maybe go for the paid version. So what do you think, Terry?
Yeah, definitely security is a hot topic, just not only with Slack, but with your email and with your identity. And there's a lot of phishing scams out there as well. So it's definitely something to really consider. I mean, if you have like NDA stuff, definitely don't put it on Slack, don't advertise it, because it can always come back and just, bite you in the keister for sure.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I think no matter what electronics, security will always be a hot topic.
Mhm.
There is always going to be hackers or people trying to get information and trying to, try not to be good people and do evil. As Google says, don't do evil to other people, but there's just people that just can't help themselves. So we just have to be mindful and just try and protect our information as best as we can. And that's just by being educated as well.
Yeah, I think that's a clear statement that Slack is saying, right? I mean, I like that they're admitting it, right? Because there's pretty much every kind of data driven company that we use, they're all vulnerable to attacks, right? There's no way we can kind of avoid it. It's more as if it's not if, it's when. and how do we respond to that? So at least I like that they're saying, hey, look, we're trying our best, but we can't stop the willing. Right? If somebody's really going to try to go after us, then sure. I mean, and so yeah, I mean, at least they're going out and they're saying it. They're like, look, this might be a potential issue, but the reality is that's the issue with any other kind of online program that you're using.
Yes, and kind of change the subject here. It is now officially after June 28th. So we've been doing this officially now for over a year.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I had to put that in there. Okay, enough about
Ding,
that.
ding, 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 ding. Okay. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So that was my article. It's called "What If All Your Slack chats Were Leaked?" And that's from the New York Times. So Terry, what do you got?
Okay, well, right. Hot off from the presses, I'm sure anybody who is an Apple fan, their biggest designer, Johnny Ive, is leaving Apple, and he is forming his own independent design company and working Apple as a client. So, what does that make for Apple's new future designer that created like one of the biggest movements, right? With the iPod and iPhone and whatever, he actually touched. So I'm just curious of like how the dynamics on Apple, are they going to insert somebody else with him, or how's that team thinking, or what are they thinking? Are more people going to leave, or more people going to join? Because whenever you have somebody there that's been there, that's been a rock, that person can be your mentor or maybe a really good boss, and they pick up and leave, you're like, oh my God, you feel like somebody kind of robbed you of something. So I'm just curious how the designers are feeling right now. So what do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting turn of events. Johnny Ive was definitely one of their biggest part of what made that company so successful over the last years, right? Starting from, I believe, when they made that kind of bubble iMac. I forgot what it was, the one with the different colors.
Yeah,
Till pretty much now, he's kind of been essential to that company. It'd be interesting to know what his reasons are for leaving and why you would want to leave. Although, if you think about it, leaving to start your own kind of business and then having the company you work for be a client, that sounds amazing. I feel like that's like the dream almost, where it's like, wow, if you could always ever get to the point where you can evolve from, instead of being working for a company, now that company kind of works with you in a collaborative thing, and you can start your own kind of side, or you could start your own business from there and then take on other clients. Maybe he was kind of bored with the aesthetic. I know with Apple, a lot of what they do is kind of a lot of the same, right? I mean, they make one iPhone, and then they iterate so much on it, and eventually he could be like, okay, what can I change to this iPhone and iPad now to make it slightly more different and better than last year's, even though we're just pretty much making the same product after a while. And so yeah, it's an interesting trend of events. I'm glad that he's kind of going out and doing his own thing. That sounds awesome to me. What does it say about Apple? I mean, who knows, right? I figure it's not like the end of the world, right? I wouldn't go as far as to say, oh man, Apple's done. I mean, they happen to be the biggest. The biggest company, the biggest tech company, especially in their field in the world, right? Like, I doubt that they're going to be in such bad shape. It's always weird when like one big company makes a misstep, and then all of a sudden people are quick to like say, oh, they're done. I know, like when Pixar kind of made The Good Dinosaur and it bombed, they're like, "Oh my God, that's the end of Pixar." And I'm like, "Wow, they have since made, a bunch of great movies since."
Movies.
So, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
I would say a company like Apple is probably gonna find a way to stay ahead of the game for at least a couple more years, maybe even a decade. Who knows? So I wouldn't count them out quite yet.
No, I really doubt it. And they'll probably make more money now, even before.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, who knows what they have cooking nowadays? And so I have no idea. I don't even know what's next as far as the next thing in tech. I don't even know if Apple knows, but yeah, but we're all waiting, right? I feel like that's the next thing
Yep,
that everybody's kind of waiting for that next big thing.
yep. It's just the waiting game. So Adam, so what do you have next for us?
Yeah, my next one, I have two small ones that I'm gonna just kind of combine. They're two kind of fun resources. One is called 21 Wallpaper. And what it is it's pretty much just a collection for you to download of these series of artists. So what their kind of tag says that every 3 months, 7 of the world's best illustrators and designers publish 3 of their works for your screen wallpaper. And yeah, I mean, it's just a collection of artwork that is formatted for your desktop and for your mobile. And as far as the artwork is, it's pretty great stuff. It's kind of stuff that you would also see like on Behance or Dribble, in the featured section. But now you can get those same artworks and put on your device, and you can have like a cool background. And so I definitely want to, on my new machine that I get, I'll probably download all these and kind of rotate them out or something. So we'll see. And so, as far as I understand, they're on their sixth iteration now with batch number 6 that they've done this. And they have a story section, so you can get a little bit of a background of some of the artists, although they've only interviewed 2, I see, Malika Favre and Christ Darzin. Man, I feel like we should rename this podcast to the Bad with Names podcast or something, because I always feel like I struggle with all these names. But you
Yeah,
could read
well,
a little bit about the artist too, and if you are a illustrator that likes kind of what they're doing, you can also submit your email and portfolio and see if maybe some of your work could be on there too. The other resource, it's kind of just this weird, kind of fun site called perspective.whydobirds.de. And their tagline is, why do birds? We have a different perspective on brands, the bird's perspective. And so what it is they take logos and they make a top-down view of them. So think of like if you're a bird flying over this kind of three-dimensional logo, what would that look like, right? And so like take the Apple logo. If it was like a 3D Apple logo, you would see kind of the top of an apple. If you see the McDonald's arches, they'll kind of look like two, I don't know, two kind of like rings, if you will. And so the site gives you all these various logos that they made just from the top view, and you kind of have to guess at what are some of these logos. And I have to admit, some of them are pretty complex. I mean, you'll get the Apple one for sure, and they're definitely ones that you can get pretty easily. But some of these were kind of trickier than I anticipated. For example, I believe the Spotify one. I believe that's Spotify, is that, Spotify is known for their 3 swooshes, kind of these 3 kind of lines that repeat, almost like a Wi-Fi signal. But when you see the logo, the one that they made, the top down, it's like almost like 3 rings on top of each other. And I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting it to be rings. And so some of them are kind of hard, or I don't know, maybe just for me that they're kind of tricky. And yeah, I
yeah.
mean, go
On
ahead.
Spotify, it looks like a squishy.
Yeah, right. I mean, it looks like a hair scrunchie or like a tire or something. I don't know what they're going for, but it doesn't look like what I feel like the real logo looks like. But I guess if you're trying to represent it in a 3D top-down view, it could be a little weird. But yeah,
Even the Nike one is like, oh, what's that? It's like that look like a clock or like a beak? And
Yeah,
when I
yeah,
hovered over, it's like, oh my God, it's a swoosh. That's so funny.
yeah. And the Adidas one, like the Adidas, I would never have gotten Adidas from that. Yeah, so the idea is that when you see the logos, you see the top-down view of them, and then you have to like hover over the image, and then it'll slowly reveal what the actual logo is. So it's kind of interesting. I definitely like some of them. It's kind of fun, and you definitely kind of see what the obvious ones are. And yeah, I mean it's kind of interesting. Terry, do you have any comments about either site?
The illustrations site, I think that's really, really awesome. Just for
Yeah.
example, if somebody wants to get better at illustration, like I would love to do that. And when I go to the site, it's like, oh, I can draw something like that and just draw something like that and just practice.
Yeah.
At least that'll give me some kind of inspiration. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, just practice. The more you do, the more you'll be creative and the better you'll be at. So that was pretty neat, pretty cool.
Yeah, and just the idea of how do you think about your artwork in different dimensions, right? How do you make it dynamic so that it works in various kind of formats? I know whenever I kind of am thinking about doing some sort of illustration, I'll kind of think of like where I would want it to live the most and then plan for that. So oftentimes I think of like, okay, if I want kind of more people to see it on Instagram, so what's the best kind of format that I would need? Now they have like a longer, more vertically orientated dimensions you can do, or you can do the regular one-to-one kind of square. But either way, what's the best way it could be presented online? That's always super interesting, because now it could be kind of done anyway, right? Because there's so many different formats out there, so it's an interesting kind of a challenge these days.
Cool.
So those were my articles. That one was 21 wallpaper.design and perspective.whydobirds.de. So Terry, what do you got?
Okay, so I'm just going to piggyback off when you say about the bird's eye view. So this is not quite bird's eye view, but when you look at the illustrations that Google Design has, it talks about the 6 principles for designing any chart. So when you look at the illustration, it looks like a bird's eye view. So let's just go with that. So, so this is by Manuel Lima. He's on the Google Design, and it's a 4-minute read. Again, it talks about 6 principles for designing any chart, and within, when you see the 6 illustrations, those illustrations subsets of like the first one. So when you look at it, it's pink. It has like a black circle, but it has pink charts, kind of like waves on top, and it says, "Be honest. Data accuracy and integrity comes first. So don't distort or confuse the information for embellishing a particular. Emphasize clarity and transparent," which that is so true, because when you see charts and when you see the information, it's like, well, is it doctored or not doctored? So definitely stay true to the form. And he gives examples. And then the next one, it says, lend a helping hand. Provide context to help users navigate the data. Build affordances that prioritize the data exploration and comparison. That means if it's a line graph, how do you compare both of the data palettes and whatnot. So I don't want to read everything, because he does go in, the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and so forth. But it's definitely a really nice read. And he does a really nice job of explaining what is what and how you can use motion to actually control of each chart, or maybe the diagram of the elements, or maybe the axis, or basically just how the data is displayed. So, well, so Adam, any notes?
Yeah. So as far as I definitely love the article, although the images that he uses doesn't really reflect the kind of charts that you would see in a regular charts, but the illustrations are pretty cool. Like to definitely kind of go with Google's sort of design aesthetic. I wanted to add a resource to that. It's called developers.google.com/charts. And what it is pretty much their version of they have a site with kind of like pre-built kind of code versions of charts that you can use. And it's sort of interesting because they give you a chart gallery that you can see, and a lot of these have like every sort of chart that you can imagine. These are all like coded for the web, right? So it's under their developer kind of section. But what I love about these two is that if you hover over them, when you hover over the bars, it reveals like a tool instead of a tooltip. It gives you additional data for that chart. And so, for example, if you see a bar chart, you can see if you hover over it, it says like 2014 sales, and it gives you a figure. And so I'm like, wow, um, that's pretty interactive. Like it's super awesome. Like I wish I could use kind of this in my designs, but these are mainly these are kind of all done through code, and so I can't really find, I don't know how to extract this and use this for like a presentation or like a one sheeter or something. But I just thought I'd throw that out there. Maybe one of you all can find use for this.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's always good to have extra information. That's for dang sure.
Yeah, I'll include that link in the show notes as well.
Cool. And then I just have one more article. It's by UX Collective. It's called 3 Ways of Thinking About Accessibility. And accessibility is very near and dear to my heart because you want to build for everybody. So when we design, sometimes we forget, oh, well, it's this or it's that. But also, too, we have to keep in mind regarding the person's capacity and their capability. And this article actually goes through about the impairment, about a certain disability, or basically what are the ideals are actually regarding the social model. So it goes by of different sections like adapt, enable, and it gives of a different definition of it, confidence and concentration. You have the person, the confident is like the person's sense of confidence to perform based on their physical and cognitive abilities. The concentration is the purpose abilities to concentrate based on the physical and social context of the time and place. So a lot of these interact and they all intersect, even though we may not think about it enough as we design, or maybe our experience is not making that connection. But when you, for example, last year, I broke my left shoulder. And I couldn't type. So it's like, oh my gosh, I only have one arm. How do I type? So basically I use the voice to actually do all my typing, to actually do all my typing. And basically I went back with my right hand and fix a lot of the things. So we actually rely on the things that we have, and we should rely on the things that we don't have, if that makes sense. But anyways, so it's definitely a great read. So what do you think, Adam?
Yeah, it's accessibility is always something that's always tricky for me because like I'm aware, which they talk about, being aware of the situation, right? But I don't know enough about it to know all the different conditions in which people have and use the site and what are their tricks that they use to get it, because there's so many different forms of just different people out there, right? Like there's so many different tricks and things that people have to do to get around and maneuver in every day. And I love the part in the site where it talks about adaption, where that adapting to a site. Well, I'll just read what it says. It says adapting their inaccessible products and services because a person wants to use it. So it says that adaption is a phrase too often used in a tired way by organizations. It's kind of like saying, we'll create this website, but let's have them adapt to us as opposed to us adapting to them, because they have the tools and resources. They know how to adapt to us more since we don't know their condition, right? And so I love that the article is saying like, no, that's really not the way to do it, right? It's we should be kind of doing what we can to make sure we're as accessible as possible. And I thought it was interesting. It's definitely an interesting topic. I would love to just delve deeper into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, that might be a future segment later on. Who knows?
Okay. Interesting.
So anyways, I have a cliffhanger. Mm-hmm. And I'm only gonna say just a tiny little bit about it. I have been getting different emails, either from LinkedIn or just from Twitter, saying, hey, I just started out. How can I get a job? How can I do this? XYZ. So anyway, I found a little article to do the opposite about that. So if you want to know more, you're going to have to go in our show notes and click on the link and read the article. So I'll leave that as a cliffhanger. Awesome. All right, Adam. So where can they reach you at?
If you want to get a hold of me, first, if you want to get a hold of us on the show, send us an email. We're available through email at ramblingsofadesignerpod@gmail.com. Let us know your comments. Let us know your questions and concerns. Send us artwork to critique. Tell us something that we learned or got wrong in the podcast. We'll read it on the show. If you want to find me directly, you can find me on Twitter. I am at Adan Cepeda. That's AdanZepeda. And I'm also on Instagram at adanz.designs. What about you, Terry? Where can we find you on the internet?
Yeah, well, they can find me on Twitter too. Flaxenink, FLAXENINK. And now I can be like Adam and say I have the Insta now. So you can follow me on Insta, which is flaxenink.designs. It's FLAXENINK.design. DESIGN. And that's it.
That is it.
That's it. So have a great week, and we'll see you the following week. Aloha.
Bye.
Bye.